Hello and welcome to the first episode of Addicted to Business. My name is Stokely Howard and I am the co-owner of Trendy Grandad, a video and social agency based in Norwich. To my left is Nathan Lomax. Hello Nathan.
My name's Nathan Lomax, co-owner of Quickfire Digital, and today our guest is the one and only Nial Adams. Hello,
Thank
Neil.
you for being here.
Hi,
Neil.
thank you very much, Stokely. Thank you very much, Nathan.
There's an incredible story. We're going to jump straight in, right? For the next 45 minutes, throughout this series, throughout this podcast, and throughout series and podcasts to come, it's all going to be around delivering maximum value in 45 minutes, okay? So there won't be too much, no kind of sales pitch and stuff like that. It's how can the listeners and watchers of this learn as much as possible. And today's topic is all around mentorship, and it's a kind of topic very close to my heart because I strongly believe, and this is the first thing we'll discuss, that we wouldn't be here today without mentorship. And so I'd like to start with a little story because stories sell and people like stories. So I was on my gap year, as you do, and I was traveling through Russia, and I decided that when I was coming back to the UK in 6 months' time, I had no job. I had nothing to do and I needed help. And so I reached out on LinkedIn and I got blocked from LinkedIn for sending too many messages.
We've all been there.
Yeah. But one of the first messages I sent was to a chap called Neil. And by the time I just got through Russia and into Mongolia and into China, I then couldn't see if he'd responded, and I thought he'd ignored me. And I got to Australia and I looked at my inbox and there was a message from this chap called Neil. And sure enough, it was your good self, sir.
I don't even realise. I didn't realise that you hadn't seen the reply. Yes.
I hadn't seen the reply, and so I basically reached out and asked for help. And one of the key first lessons for this podcast, for anyone to take away, is that it's okay to ask for help, right? There are people out there, such as yourself, that are willing to help. And so I asked for help, and sure enough, when I came back from traveling, a few more people had replied, and everyone accepted my offer, which was for free work. And so I came back, and I was inundated with work, as you remember, but I was doing it all for free. And you were the third person I met, I'll never forget it, and you said, from this day forwards, it's £25 an hour. And it was at the Drayton Old Lodge. I'll never forget that, and from that day forwards it was.
Your memory's definitely better than mine.
So, and we started charging, and then you said about that you wanted to go, so that you're running a kind of academy and a course, and you invited me on the course as a kind of scholar, because again I had no funds or anything like that, and you kind of took me under your wing and said I could come on the course. And then after that, the next offer was even more surprising, was kind of I will take you under my wing and mentor you, and I ended up coming round every Tuesday or Wednesday for...
Couldn't get rid of you.
Exactly. Like a really
You didn't want him to come round.
For years. I was there for years. And I met with the family, and wonderful. We had some incredible times, and I look back with great memories, and it's amazing that we've still kept in touch and we'll continue to keep in touch. But enough of the storytelling. Let's jump into it. My first question is why? Why did you reply, and why did you offer to help?
I think, and you obviously know the answer partly to this, is that really there were two key things, and one was that I had the benefit of an incredible mentor myself. Yeah. And yes, the pay it forward principle is something that a lot of people are keen to adopt, because we recognise that when we get value from somebody, we feel obliged, we feel committed, and it's the right thing to do. And I was incredibly fortunate when I got into marketing, and I was working in sales, I suppose at the time, really, and sort of transitioned from sales into marketing. I remember picking up a business magazine. You probably remember the story of this, Nathan. I picked up a business magazine, and in this magazine there was a small card deck, like a freebie that came with a business magazine. And in this card deck, there were a dozen cards or 30 cards or something, with little quotes on there about marketing, about things to do, produced by a guy. And I reached out to him and said, look, this is really incredible, because I'd studied marketing in its formal sense, in its traditional form. I'd read all the original books and done the courses and stuff. And to be frank, most of it didn't work. Most of it was a complete waste of time. It was way out of date. And the information that this guy was providing in these cards was really refreshing. It was something completely different for me. And I thought, this guy really knows what he's talking about. I need to speak with him. So I got in touch with him and said, look, I want to learn. I want to learn from you and understand what it is that you've got here and why it's so different to the material that I've been used to. So I met with Ifti Bukhari, and he worked in London. And I hopped on the train, went down there and said, look, teach me everything you know, and I'll give you everything I can in return. Again, he didn't charge me anything. It wasn't a business transaction. He saw an opportunity to help develop and grow me, and in return, I helped and worked with him in his business and so on. So, yeah, clearly the answer to the question is because I'd been through a similar experience myself. And going back to your story, Nath, I've said this to you before as well. I remember when I first read this email, I'm thinking, okay, who's this guy all around? And certainly, like a lot of people at my point in that career, I got lots and lots of contacts from people through LinkedIn and lots of pitches and lots of people who wanted to chat and have coffee and all the usual stuff. And I was a little bit suspicious at first. And I'm thinking, is this guy going to steal all my material and disappear off with it? Or is he, working for the competition or whatever? But, at the end of the day, you have to be open-minded with these things. So really that was the case. And, when I first met you, when you were only 19, 20, whatever you were.
A few stones lighter.
It was evident to me that you were somebody who was serious about learning. And that's the thing. There are a lot of people who know that they've got problems they want to fix. They know they've got things they want to learn or issues they want to address. And a lot of people say, help, woe is me. But they don't really want to put the work in.
A lot of people say things, but they don't actually
things.
Action it, do they?
Absolutely. They'd rather spend more time thinking about it and complaining about it than actually getting off the backside and saying, okay, well, that person can help, and that person can help, and that person can help. And we know the Red Apple story, which we'll maybe mention later on. But yeah, it was a really good example of somebody, a young person with some drive and enthusiasm who said, show me what you can. And it became pretty obvious to me very, very quickly that you were sincere. Once we'd overcome that hurdle, then it was a case of, let me teach you everything I can, because that's the experience that I've had, and without a question of a doubt, the knowledge that I gained from IFTI over the 3 or 4 years that he mentored me, built my career, built who I am.
And so how did you manage? Because week on week I would come back. Week on week you'd always provide the sandwiches, and we'd have hours and hours of just, I'd never forget once actually, you kind of knew what I was thinking before I thought it, and it was the weirdest thing ever, and you were like, I know you're ready to go home now. And I was like, what? How does he know this? This is bizarre. It was genius.
Well, that's
and I'm not expecting those secrets.
Experience.
But what I am interested in is every week there was more material, and every week there was new stuff, and every week I would leave with absolute gold dust. As a mentor or a coach or kind of a helper, how do you ensure that every single week you learn more and more stuff? Because since then, I've very rarely found people that could consistently deliver week on week new and engaging material.
I think the answer to that is that you've got to focus on the stuff that works. And I don't just mean the technical stuff, but I mean the approach to the work. And crucially, the approach to clients, the relationships you build with clients, the relationship you build with colleagues, contacts, other people that you work with and associate with in business. And, the things that we've always talked about are how to run a business properly. And when I say properly, what I mean is how to be ethical. And that's one thing I respect you for greatly, Nath, because that's something that a lot of people don't do. They dive into it, they see the opportunity. And, marketing's a good business. You can make good money very, very quickly in marketing, but there are a huge number of people out there who pitch way above, they punch way above their weight in terms of their ability. They'll sell it, they'll take, charge the fat fees and not really deliver on it, and then they'll just dump that client, go on to the next one, and end up building a trail of devastation behind them, which eventually will catch up with them. So I think in terms of selecting the things and just talking about and responding to you as well about your step progression. And that's another thing with mentoring. Mentoring is not all simply about giving everybody all the answers. In fact, it's the complete opposite. It's about giving them the clues and letting them work out what the answers are.
I guess that holding up the mirror concept in terms of, you can work it out for yourself, but I will shape and guide the conversation to navigate you towards the answer.
Absolutely. And that's really the most important thing I would say is to recognize what the mentee needs. It's not a training course. You're actually looking at the person, the individual, and it's across the board as well. It's not just technical stuff. It's also the emotional stuff and how you deal with being in business, and this how you deal with the failures and the rejections, and also the successes. Because too much success too early can also have a detrimental effect to somebody in business. I've seen that happen a few times as well. So really, it's a case of building that relationship, a friendship, a trusted relationship, where you can feed that information in at the right level, at the right pace. That person can then go, and in your case, you certainly were able to do that, was to take that information and actually apply it. Learning's no good without application.
So to all the people out there that look at look at mentors or who are new in business and look at either like coaches or mentors, which are two different things. I completely respect that. How would you explain to someone who's starting off in business, why is a mentor so important to a new business? But for someone like Adam and I, we haven't been in business very long, but Nathan's took us under his wing, and it's been absolutely invaluable. Obviously I know the answers to this question a little bit, but why is it so important?
I think without a question, the most important reason for that is speed. It's about getting to the next result quicker, because the well-worn cliche of don't try and reinvent the wheel. There really is no point in trying to do it all yourself. A lot of people in business, a lot of people entrepreneurial, one of the key attributes that they have is that they're hard workers. They like a challenge. They like tackling a challenge and getting a result from it and figuring it out. Figuring out what it is I need to do. How do I need to do things differently? Looking at a situation, whether it's and you learn more from failure than you do from success.
Yeah.
So the thing that makes a massive advantage really is short circuit the process. Don't try and go through and reinvent everything yourself. This old expression, which is very true: success leaves tracks, follow them. And it doesn't matter whether it's business, whether it's sport, whether it's any subject at all that you look at, whether it's the music industry, whatever it might be. Look at people who are successful and look at the tracks that they leave and hop on those tracks and follow them. That's not to say that you've got to try and emulate them or copy them or mirror them or anything like that. But from a mentor's point of view, the satisfaction, and many conversations I've had with Nathan before, is to say, look, Nathan, don't do it this way because it'll take a long time. If you do it this way, trust me, you'll get to the result you're looking for a lot quicker. And that just helps to accelerate things. It's like, starting off without the training wheels and getting straight on the track and getting the results a lot faster.
Yeah, it's been the advice that we've received has been invaluable, and like you said, why would you reinvent the wheel when you can learn from other people's failures rather than make them yourself, and with being completely transparent here, we've made loads of failure. We've failed lots of different things.
If you're not failing often enough, then you're not working hard enough. So
I think one of the key things that I took from Nathan, which is why this is the sort of advice that you get from a mentor, is we when we were pitching, we were always worried about like budget. We'd always overprice our clients. So if we're pitching, we would always go, right, we've gone in at $1,000 and their budget is only 600. But the reason why is, we didn't know this, is we didn't actually ask their budget. So it's like, what is your budget? And just from asking that one simple question, our conversion rate's been a bit higher, but we wouldn't have known that if we wouldn't have asked someone that's already been down that path.
So I think the next thing I'd like to talk to you about is there's a plethora of business coaches, self-called mentors, all that good stuff. And often I've found the best mentors I've had, certainly in my career, have been those that don't advertise as mentors, right? They're just everyday business people that somehow manage to find even more time for lunch, coffee, days in a week, whatever. For someone listening and watching today, how do you qualify to find the right mentor? Because sometimes it's not a paid experience. Yes, you might cover lunch costs. Yes, you might cover coffee costs, whatever. You might even cover room hire. But it's very easy to get sucked into the whole, it's £500 a month and off you go, which as a small business, you just can't sustain.
Yeah, and I think this is where we've got to be a bit careful, but also at the same time be very honest. And coaching, and I've worked in coaching, and I've run coaching programs and paid for programs and so on. I'm not so much up on it these days, but certainly there was a period of time a few years ago when going into coaching and life coaching, when everybody you met was a life coach. And you think, I even met somebody once who turned around and said, I said, well, why are you doing life coaching? And the guy said, well, I've tried this and I was no good at it, and I tried that, I was no good at that, and I tried this, I was useless at that as well, so I thought I'd become a coach. And he was genuine, he was being sincere about it, which kind of scared me even more. So, whenever there's a price tag up front, you have to remember they're selling you something. And that's not to say it's not going to be good, and there are some amazing coaches out there, people I can name, people I can think of. And certainly in some cases, those people charge really significant fees, but they are worth it because of the level that they can bring a person forward.
About return on investment, right?
Absolutely, it's a return on investment for them. Whereas with mentoring and the kind of relationship that we built early on, if it's a transactional relationship, it's just that, and it's always a case of looking at the clock and saying, well, it's you get a 50-minute hour and it's this much money, and sorry, I'm going to have to hang up the phone now, or I can't deal with your email, or what. And that's not really the way it needs to be, because it's much better if it can be a relationship where it's more of a friendship in essence, a respectful friendship both ways, where you feel comfortable about asking that question, knowing that you're going to get the person's response back from them when they're ready. And yeah, I would say to you probably that some of the best mentors out there are people who don't see it as a professional or commercial relationship or a transactional relationship. Time is a challenge, because clearly you want to be mentored by somebody who's good, who knows what they're doing, and has a proven track record. But equally, those people tend to have fairly busy lives as well.
Sure.
So it's about asking and seeking out the person who you think. And it doesn't also necessarily mean that you have to have a mentor that's going to be there for years and years and years. It may just be that you need to get through a particular project or do a particular thing, or you're expanding in a particular area that you haven't thought of before or haven't worked in before. And you look to seek out a mentor who's very good at that particular area and say, will you give me some help and advice and guidance on this particular aspect? And, the relationship may be a little bit shorter in terms of time and not just an open-ended relationship.
And this is the thing, right? All mentoring relationships have a journey or a course. And just because they end, it doesn't mean that mentorship officially finishes or friendship finishes. All it means is that you then seek further mentors. And one thing I think the listeners here may be guilty of, and certainly I'm guilty of, is there almost too many mentors now. I've had such great success and was able to shortcut so many processes and kind of thoughts and concepts through great mentorship that I've now seeked to find many mentors to all help at once. And the challenge then is that you almost have too many cooks. And so you're pulled from pillar to post. Now, I'm always of the opinion that actually I can handle 5 or 6 opinions and then make my own. But I know some people, and even myself sometimes, I can't. Right, all of a sudden I'm like, actually, I'd rather just not have asked anyone because I've got so many opinions now. I'm even further from the answer than I was.
Yeah, it can confuse you even more.
So is there a kind of, is there a holy grail, or is it a case of it's whatever works for you?
I think it's probably, truthfully, it's down to a bit of luck. I mean, you can decide what that really means to people. We can go into a deep philosophical argument about what that really means, but
what is luck?
The harder you work, the luckier you get, and being in the right place, the right time, and all that kind of stuff. And certainly from a point of view of networking, and that was where I built my career a lot through networking. And I created the Antidote, which was a big networking organisation, and I met people all different stages of their business, all different levels of success. Totally different characters, a real mix of people with, who could be quite aloof and even to some degree slightly arrogant, other people who are extremely friendly but didn't really have a great deal to offer. So how do you pick and choose? And I would say probably the one thing is more is not necessarily better. Yeah. You can't necessarily expect to have, half a dozen people mentoring you all at the same time, because you are going to get those conflicts of interest. And also from a mentor's perspective as well, it can appear a little bit disrespectful if somebody says, look, mentor me, and especially if it's a relationship where it's not paid for.
Sure.
I as a mentor, I'm volunteering my time to help the mentee. If that person then runs off and comes back next week and says, I've decided I'm going to be mentored by this person as well, and this person as well, and this person as well, the question then has to be, well, where do you want to spend your time?
Yeah.
Because if you were going to university and you wanted to talk to a professor on a particular subject, you wouldn't then go off to another university and talk to another professor, another one. So you've got to be prepared to put a bit of time in, and quality time as well, so that person as a mentor has the opportunity to open up. And I'm saying these things are not always necessarily a transactional relationship. Truthfully, they really are. Because even if it's not a financial gain, there is an emotional gain.
Of course there is.
Again, we could delve into the depths of, what is really, self-sacrifice and all the rest of it. We all know that we actually do everything we do for ourselves and our own intentions anyway. So for me personally, to see that I've managed to pay it forward to you, and now you're paying it forward to other people, is massive and worth way more to me than any charge per hour and all the rest of it, because we've got a room of people out here that you've employed and people who you work with and business partners and associates that you've helped grow and other companies and so on. And if we look at the bigger social context of what that means, it helps to improve business. And that improves lots of people's lives. I mean, and your clients, the clients that you develop through the businesses that you grow, and whether that's, you run a pet shop or whether you run a digital marketing agency, it doesn't make any difference. It still has a value to it, and that comes back to you, to the person as a mentor.
So for those looking for a mentor now, would you say, first, we'll start with the approach and then we'll go with the structure. So the approach, how would you suggest people approach a mentor? Is there a method that works better than others, or is it purely just trying something different? I mean, you see all these people sending puzzles with missing pieces and saying, oh, yeah, I've got the missing piece, let's meet for a coffee. I see people sending LinkedIn messages. I see people giving cold calls. I see people, somebody knocks on Sir Alex Ferguson's door and literally just approached him really cold and just said, I want to play for you. Like, there's all different ways of doing it. Do you think there's a one-size-fits-all model?
No, there's never a one-size-fits-all model. But at the same time, I think it's a good idea to avoid gimmicks.
Being the puzzle?
Well, yes.
He's got a puzzle sat out there now, ready to go.
Okay, so they're attention grabbers. I get that, and that's that's useful to cut through the noise in some cases. But really, I think the most important thing is a genuine, sincere, and personal approach. For God's sake, don't send, the standard stock email the way you've just, done a top and tail and regurgitated.
Put the wrong name in and everything else.
And then, exactly. And then somebody else's name appears halfway in, which you missed. You really are better off trying to avoid that completely. Like anything, if you're trying to, woo a person and gain their attention and a little bit of respect at that point, mentioning a little bit about them. I recognize that you do this and you're seen as this person, and in this industry, you've done this, you've achieved these certain things. I'm at this point in my career, I'm trying to grow as well. It would be really useful for me if, I could learn from you. And I think maybe in some cases, even avoiding the word mentor.
Yeah.
I think it's quite comparable. I think you can compare it to like finding love almost, right? Bear with me on this one. For example, when I met Nathan, I wasn't looking for a mentor. Me and Adam weren't looking for someone to coach us or to guide us. We just fell in love. We just bumped into Nathan and that was it. And then the next thing you know, it goes on. Do you think that happens a lot more to most people than actually like seeking a relationship or seeking a mentor?
Yeah, I think when there's a similarity, when you recognise certain attributes in somebody that you believe that you have in yourself.
Maybe you've already got one you don't even know.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, as I say, it depends really what the motivation is, and I guess for most mentors, the purest form of motivation is the desire to help and to share, and certainly, I've always said that the mantra that I've always worked to is that knowledge shared is never diminished, only multiplied. And this is the big thing, that people kind of want to keep their secrets to themselves, and they think that if they share their knowledge with other people, it will diminish that knowledge in some way, or it will detract from them, or it will produce a potential risk for them further down the line. Yeah, it might do, but hey, you've got to take a risk sometimes. So I think where there's a recognition, honesty is the biggest thing of all. Absolutely being transparent and honest, and just telling it tell it the way it is. I mean, this is the biggest problem I think we have in business a lot, and in marketing we've got a lot to blame for. In that everything has to be always dressed up in a particular way and presented in a particular way and delivered in a certain way. And we all know, authenticity sells. And that's the biggest thing, is just be yourself. And I guess that's the point, is using your analogy as well. If you're yourself and that other person is themselves, and you both let your guard down and just say, look, this is what I want.
This is who I am.
This is who I am. This is what I'm asking for. And I think you're maybe the person that could help me. I'd really appreciate and show the appreciation of the value of the time that person's giving you.
I think people appreciate honesty as well, don't they?
Absolutely, and certainly because there are so many people out there that have this approach which leaves people thinking, what's the real agenda? What's the hidden agenda? And for me, that's a very big thing. I can openly admit now, as I'm less involved in the industry, but I spend a lot of time looking at people thinking, what is this person's actual agenda?
Yeah.
And the more worrying thing is actually when the agenda is hidden and you start to realize what's going on, but they're concealing it from you. Whereas you'd be much better off if a person said, look, I want to do exactly what you're doing and I want to be as successful as you in your industry, but I'm not planning to compete with you at this stage, but I'd want to be another person like you. And if you say that to the right person, and this is the thing is, mentors are, it's not a job description. It's about finding people who know what they're doing, have the ability to articulate it, and that's another thing as well. Going to mentor who just knows what they're doing is only half the story. You need to find a mentor who A, knows what they're doing, and B, has an ability to pass that information on.
What if you do find a bad mentor? And what is a bad mentor?
A bad mentor is a person who is probably, you'll get a sense that person is holding back. You get a sense that the person is just simply going through the motions for it. And certainly if it's a non-paid for arrangement, and that person's feeling that the mentee is maybe taking too much time, and they're not prepared to step up and say, look, we're going to have to back off or slow these things down a bit, then clearly the mentor-mentee relationship is not the right mix. And I think that's the thing. You probably have to meet a few people, and that's definitely the key thing. Don't latch on to the very first person.
On the first one, right?
Don't obsess on the first person you meet. It may be that is the right person for you. It may be that you need to look at others as well.
Yeah.
But I guess it's not always easy.
Yeah.
But you go out there, you get on with it, you make approaches to people, you talk to them, you ask for help, and when the relationships match up, the mentor and the mentee will come together.
Yeah.
I think as well the nice thing about mentorship is I've always compared it to feeding and being fed. And so to start with, you're absolutely taking far more than you're giving. So as a mentee, you're kind of like, you're like a sponge, just taking all the information. And then you start to come to a point where you start to feel able or almost qualified to start to give some things back. And whether that be through business leads and opportunities, whether it be through introductions or whatever, all of a sudden you then get to a point where you're almost, you're absolutely not unequal, but at the same time you're closer, right? And
you never know where this person's going to get to, do you? You never know. Nathan might be running a £10 million business next week or something,
Absolutely.
and then it'll come back to you.
Absolutely.
You never know.
And just the thought that popped into my head, which is relevant to this, is probably where this partly goes back, in my point of view, is my earlier life where I taught martial arts. And one of the greatest ambitions you have as an instructor within the martial arts is always to produce somebody who's better than yourself. So that would be the same in anything: athletics, gymnastics, sport, any kind of subject of a similar type. Is the ultimate goal really is to produce a student who exceeds your own ability.
I'm really glad you brought that up, actually, because one of the things I'm sure is to do with some kind of mixed martial arts is around mastery. And I believe there's X amount of thousands of hours to go through before you can officially become
the quote is the 10,000
10,000
hours. So
that's it. So that's another reason why mentorship and learning and continuous development is so important, right? Because to achieve mastery, you need to put in the hard graft, you need to put in the learning and sacrifice to be able to get there. And like we've always said, mentors can kind of shortcut that process.
Yeah, and the other thing you get from mentorship as well, or being a mentor, is you also get another benefit, which is probably less obvious. And that is that when you're teaching and developing another person, you're also extending your own awareness a little bit further.
You're learning a lot as well by teaching.
And certainly, again, reflecting back and looking at the parallels between my early career as an instructor in the martial arts, and I taught internationally. I taught members of the armed forces and worked in the security industry and so on. And the one thing I know is that actually, I was very lucky because I started teaching at a very young age, and that continued for many, many years. But that was one of the things that really was instrumental in helping me to improve. Because you can't teach a subject to somebody unless you really interrogate it and understand it. So, and thinking back probably to some of the cases and times when I would explain something to you, and you'd say, "But why would you do it that way?" So, being challenging, as a mentee, challenging the mentor as well, is not just about also seeking, confirmation or looking for answers in a different way, but it's also good from the mentor's point of view because that person's saying, "Well, you did this and I've done this, but I haven't got the same set of results. Why do you think that is?" And that's also crucial because don't assume that every mentor has all of the answers.
Well, this is a perfect next point, right? Is actually, yes, there may be shortcuts, but they're not guaranteed to be on the right path. Yeah, there may be shortcuts in your journey, but we use this analogy before that, yes, you might be going to Cornwall, and yes, you can give me a shortcut, but your shortcut might not speed up my journey to Cornwall, right? It might just be a shortcut that takes me somewhere else.
And things change. Maybe the route to Cornwall's, changed since the last time that mentor
put in the NDR and off we go.
Well, so, and that's another big thing. I remember meeting many years ago with a client, and not going to mention any specific details, but this person worked in the music industry, was a really big name in the music industry during the 80s. I mean, a very, very big name. And had kind of spent all his millions, I guess, although he still had his helicopter and his supercars and his horses in the paddock and all the rest of it. But
not all of it, then.
No, exactly. But he wanted to get back. Basically, he wanted to get back into the game and get back to earning some healthy income. I think partly to fund his lifestyle. And it became very obvious very early on that what the guy was talking about was the way things were back in the 80s, and just trying to explain to him that, I'm really sorry to say to you, but people don't go to Woolies anymore and buy a single off the shelf.
What's Woolies? I'm joking.
And he really did have that mentality. It was all about, which records are at number one and how much is it going to cost, and and how can we get this into the record shops, and it's like, and this is quite a while ago. So it's even funnier now when we talk about it today because, I remember saying to the guy in particular, people don't pay to own a music, or rather they don't pay to listen to music in the way that you're used to. So if I was somebody in the music industry going to him, as much as this guy had an amazing career, an amazing history and reputation to work with some fantastic international artists, his knowledge was so far behind the curve that really wouldn't have been much use at all. So just because it worked for a mentor, and they're saying to you, this is something I would recommend you do, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the right answer for a couple of reasons. One is it could be that worked for that particular mentor at that particular time because there was a degree of luck, or there were other extenuating factors that assisted that. And also, certainly in particular, in terms of the speed and pace of change that we experience now, is things are done differently, even in 5 years. thinking about marketing today, even in 5 years, and you think about how things have changed.
Or even in a year, it's always ever changing,
Incredible.
isn't
Absolutely.
it? Yeah.
So it's not always that a mentor who's got a great deal of experience in the past necessarily has a great deal of information that's relevant today. But the approach, the mentality, the attitude, and those maybe slightly softer facts are probably more useful. Whereas the technical deployment of those things may have changed. So again, when you're seeking a mentor, look for somebody who's got a good grounding in knowledge, but at the same time also has some relevant and current information that's still going to help. Otherwise, you're going to be learning the way things were done, and they're not necessarily the way things are done.
If they're moving, then they're good. Yeah.
So let's take us back 6 years, I think it was. 5-6 years. Okay, and we're sat around your kitchen, kind of the office in the conservatory, and I'll never forget it. And for now, I'm not the mentee anymore. The people listening are. Okay, the listeners and the people watching, they're our mentees. Okay, what are we telling them if they're starting a business today? What are, say, 3 or 4 core principles that they can take out? And one of the ones that really always stuck with me is don't chase the money. That was one that you always said to me almost week after week. Nath, as soon as you start chasing the money, it won't come. And sure enough, over time, I've chased the money, and sure enough, it hasn't come. So what are the 3 or 4 things that we can pass on to the audience to kind of get them started on their mental journey?
That's definitely one of them, and I'd still stand true to that point as well. I still believe it's the case, and that was information, knowledge that was passed to me by my mentor, and I've passed it on to you, and you'll have to pass it on as well.
Yeah. I'm chasing money is a terrible mentor.
That'll be proven. But I think probably the biggest thing of all is value. Life is about value. Building relationships with clients, customers, people who are prepared to pass over money and pay you for the services that you offer. Nothing has any intrinsic value other than the perceived value that other people see in it. And that's even more exposed in case of things like large brands, just because you can buy one T-shirt that's got no name on it and the same T-shirt that's got a brand strapped across the front, and it's 5 times, 10 times more money because of the perceived value. So certainly people going into business, the one thing I would say is reward comes as a result of value delivered. And whenever you're trying to sell or offer something for sale or produce something for somebody, the only time they're going to engage with it, the only time they're going to commit to it, and definitely the only time they're actually going to hand money over for it, is when they recognize what they perceive as the value behind that. And it's the value in their eyes, not the value in your eyes. So, you can say, well, at the moment, this is interesting for me because I'm experiencing a whole new way of doing things, as an artist now, and my reputation's growing, my career's growing, and, I'm selling pieces abroad, and things are going incredibly well for my career. And certainly when it comes to a piece of art, selling a piece of art to somebody, how you define what's worth £150 or £1,500 or £15,000 is such a subjective thing. I mean, art is probably the most subjective topic.
I agree, yeah.
When it comes to value. But there are several factors that all key into that, and that's the number one thing. If you want to be successful, if you want to earn money being successful, enjoy what you do, build a reputation where people respect you for the success that you're enjoying, and maybe come to you as a mentor, the one thing you've got to look for is what value am I actually delivering? It's not about the price you're charging, it's about the value that's being received at the other end. And the more that you can add value into your offer, the better it is. And we've talked again, even when you break that down into its sort of constituent parts, writing a proposal. We talked a lot about putting proposals together.
We talked a lot about proposals.
And, again, one of the phrases, and many phrases that IFTI used to share with me, never disclose price until you've established value. And that's so true. People say, they'll give you the headline subject and they'll say, and the price is this. And the reader, the viewer, the listener, whatever, looks at it and thinks, well, I have no idea what that means. I know how much that is in pounds and what it can buy me somewhere else if I go shopping or on holiday or a car or whatever. But how does that price relate to what I'm getting? So never disclose price until you establish value, because the price that you disclose only has a meaning once the value has been shown.
Completely agree.
And that's absolutely crucial. I think another big thing I would say to people is definitely, follow through on your promises. Follow through on what you aim to deliver. And it's not good enough to kind of do 90% or even 95%. You've got to be on everything. And the
almost over deliver, right? More 105,
absolutely.
110 than the other way.
It's so hard to build a good reputation. It takes so long. You've got to work so many hours to put in. You've got to suffer the slings and arrows of successes and failures and people who let you down and stab you in the back and do all sorts of crazy things. And sometimes you think, is it worth it? And you just have to keep going. But you have to treat every single client relationship, business relationship, customer, whether it's over the till, over a counter, or whether it's through big, heavy proposals or bidding for contracts or whatever, always follow through with it. And again, a phrase which you'll have heard me say before, this concept of that'll do. There are people in life who will get to a point where their boredom creeps in, or their frustration or their tiredness creeps in, and they'll say, that'll do. That's enough, and they'll close it off and consider that finished. And then there are other people who will recognize that that'll do is not enough, and that I need to finish that off to 100%, not 90.
Where's the middle ground? Because I absolutely buy into that. The only challenge is when people overdo it. A bit like a painting, right? There's good, and there's a middle ground of good is good enough, and then there's like almost too much, which then you lose time, money, resource, all those good things because you're doing things that aren't even needed, right? Where's the common or happy ground?
It's a great question, and there's a really simple answer to it. And the answer is when you're satisfied.
And that's perfect for the listeners, right? When you can sleep at night.
When you as the person who's delivering it, it's not about what you think the client wants. The question is it good enough for you? Because if you're constantly thinking, well, the client's not going to mind if I haven't done that bit, or the customer's not going to worry if I haven't wrapped it and packed it properly and all the rest of it. If you're always trying to second guess what you think your customers want, you're never going to get the answer to it. So the easiest way to do that is simply make your own decision about what you believe is good enough. And yeah, the kind of phrase, treat your customers as you'd expect to be treated by someone else. So if you make the decision that this is your mark in the sand, you'll always push to that mark in the sand. And if it's good enough for you, that's as good as it can be. Yeah. That's for me is the point. And the great analogy when I'm working on a piece and a painting, when is it finished? And the only way I can ever answer that is through my own eyes, which is really difficult because I've seen the entire process.
You're close to it, right? You're
too close to it, and you never see the end result fresh. You only see the progressive steps from start to finish. But for me, I have to step back and look at it and be satisfied in my mind to my level of value and my idea of what's finished work. And then it's really a case of letting it loose and saying to the world, here it is. In my eyes, this is right. If you like it, you'll pay money for it. If you don't like it, or if you want a person painted there or a tree put here or a house there, then you're looking for somebody else. I'm not the artist that you're looking for. And I think that's the thing is, set yourself a very high standard and stick to your own standards. Be your own judge. Because when you're your own judge, you don't have to worry about other people judging you. They will. And that's absolutely fine. But that's relevant to them. That's not actually really relevant to you.
And so, we're going to start some mentorship again. This is genius. In terms of ethics and beliefs, and this is one thing you've always instilled in me, we touched upon a little bit today, but is there a way to what would be the starting process to kind of map out your ethics and beliefs? Because I strongly believe that behind any business, there should be a core set of values or ethics and beliefs, which they kind of live and die by, right? And roll out through whatever they do. How would someone listening today start on a journey of finding or noting down their ethics and beliefs?
By really reflecting and looking at yourself and asking yourself this question, why am I doing this? Why am I actually doing this?
What
do I believe? Lock yourself in a room, shut the door, and turn your Alexa off and your phone off so nobody's listening, and have a conversation with yourself and actually say, look, why am I doing this? Am I just really doing this for the money? Am I doing it for the fame and the glory? Am I doing it for the friends? Am I doing it for the wild parties and champagne and Coke and all the rest of it and an exciting lifestyle because that's who I want to be, who I think I want to be?
Sure.
And have a serious conversation and a seriously honest conversation.
I was going to say that's a deep journey, right? Because what you think you want and what you actually want can be poles apart. So I've been talking about this recently in a couple of presentations I've done. The whole facade or mask or different hat or however you look at it. Actually, what is the real you want? Not what is some made up version of you that you portray. What they want.
Or pressures from family or friends.
Exactly
what they want, perhaps.
Absolutely, and that's a very big thing. Is this sense of And it's interesting, a lot of people in business, a lot of people who succeed in any field in life, you often find that there is a degree of a lack of self-worth, or a lack of confidence, or certainly insecurity. That's a very big thing. It's not by accident. A lot of people who have achieved fame and success, and we can think about, again, you know, the film industry, the music industry, and various other things, those people have a degree of insecurity. So they're proving to themselves, they're having to prove to themselves all the time that they're pushing forward. And I think, you know, Jamie Smart is another name I've got to share, in the fact that Jamie is an incredible mentor to me. I don't spend a lot of time talking with Jamie now, but you know, he and I worked together very early on, and I learned so much from Jamie Smart, and definitely a name to seek out online. And one of the big things he questioned me for is, you know, what is it you really want? And the question is very simple. If you could have anything you want in life, if somebody could just suddenly wave a magic wand or cast a spell and say, you can now have what you want in life with no restrictions, no obstructions at all, what would you actually want? What lifestyle would you actually want? Many people take a step back and suddenly realize that what they're chasing is not what they want at all. It's what they think they want, or it's what they think they want or they'll need to get to where they think they want to be. And certainly very much in a case of thinking, oh God, I've come down this road now and all my friends are encouraging me to do this because they think I'm really good at it. And now I've got to do it for them or my family. I mustn't let them down. So you have to be completely honest. And that's why sometimes there's a time when you get to a point in a career or a subject matter or something that you're doing, and you have to stop and say, do you know what? This is not what I want for the future.
And so this takes us on perfectly to the next thing, which is around measuring success, right? So you go on this journey, you get so far down it, you're in touching distance, it feels, of what was deemed success when you set out however many years ago, and you realise, Christ, this is certainly not the path I thought I was on, and wow, now I'm here. I've spent so much time not looking at how far I've come, and a phrase we've always talked about is climbing up the mountain and taking time to look around, right, and see what's there, rather than just racing to the top and then realising, I was foggy. It's not quite what I'd hoped. Yeah. What can we educate people listening and kind of watching? What advice can we give them on kind of goal setting and measuring success? Because sometimes success is something that's so unattainable, or perhaps it is attainable, but it's in 5-10 years, and actually you almost need some smaller milestones to know when to stop and look and pat yourself on the back and go, Christ, you've actually done a really good job, you know. Yeah.
Another name, Richard Jackson, who formulated the winning edge. Yeah. A lot of people know of Richard's work, and Richard's expression that success is the continual progression towards worthwhile goals. So success is not a place or a destination. Success is the process of working towards those worthwhile goals. Now, again, the question then is, how do you decide and who makes the decision about what the worthwhile goal is? But what I'm going to say, and as cheesy and as cliched as it sounds, the be in the now scenario is the key to it. You cannot live with the past thoughts of where you were and what happened and the things that went wrong. And equally, you can't always live with the aspiration of that one day I'm going to have this car and this house and this relationship.
Always
and this
looking forward.
Absolutely. And, you know, somewhere as a destination being where you want to get to. The question is, what is your life like today? And definitely when it comes to dealing with the emotional challenges of progressing and pushing yourself forward in life, if you're always constantly feeling dissatisfied that you haven't yet got there and you haven't got there yet, you need to do more and more and more, that's where you're always going to be. So it's not by accident that people who we perceive externally as being incredibly successful have incredibly unhappy lives, because they've achieved what everyone else tells them is success, and yet they're not happy.
I think one of the key things when everyone says about my time with yourself, and one of the biggest things I learned was around emotional intelligence. And that's something that isn't necessarily textbook learning. It wasn't how to run a Facebook campaign. It wasn't how to schedule some tweets or whatever. It was almost at a higher level, right? And so for the audience listening, how can you start on a journey of emotional intelligence so that you know and can comprehend that sometimes you need to take a step out, you need to look at it from a bird's eye view, you need to gain perspective, you need to realize that actually in the grand scheme of things, there are people out there with no water and no food, and life's actually not that bad just because a client's been particularly not pleasant. Like, it's really not the end of the world.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, is to stop and do a self-check. and just say, when life is really crap and the clients cancel the contract and this has happened and somebody's walked out of the business or whatever it might be, and whatever trials you've discovered when you jump in a nice comfortable car and drive home to a nice apartment and open the fridge and it's full of food, and there's a good reason there to have that stop and self-check. And I know, again, that can be a bit trite to say, well, think of people who are starving in Africa. What have you got?
Obviously, it's so hard to do, right?
Absolutely,
when you're in the moment.
And it's all subjective to everybody. But I think the other thing as well is to say, be flexible. Actually, remember a degree of flexibility and the fact that not everything is preordained. Not everything is decided and determined going forward. Next year I've got to do this. Next year I've got to do this. Have an idea today about what you think you need to be doing. Look, success is about positive daily habits. And for me, the easy way to measure things is to get to the end of a day and say, what have I achieved? What have my outputs been today? What habits have I performed that have helped me to be who I want to be and take me forward and progress? But equally, if those habits need to change, you need to be aware of those habits and recognize them. And those habits can be things that you do, the way you approach your job, the way you approach your work, the way you think about yourself, the business relationships that you have. Sometimes you can have a business relationship that's not a particularly positive one, and it may be that you're going to have to break that to move forward. So have the ability and the self-confidence to know that being flexible is part of the process.
So the final thing we're going to touch upon is if I thought that there was the skills and the education you gave to me weren't enough. You've kind of pivoted totally, and now you've stepped away from what you were doing, and now there's a skill which, well, I certainly, when I first met you, didn't even know was there, and now an incredibly accomplished artist. Tell us a little bit more about that journey. There's a few more minutes left of the podcast, but I'd like people listening and watching to just understand what it is you're doing now, right? Because unless I'm wrong, I don't think you're doing a lot of marketing stuff now. It's more in the art space. So what is it you're doing? Where can people find out and see these incredible pieces of work?
Yeah, thanks. I think, I know that the reason it happened was because I'd reached a point in my career where after 15, 16, nearly 18 years working in the marketing game, I've always had a slight part of my character which says that when I get to a certain point in life, I have to break it and change things, and not necessarily in a completely destructive way, but I get bored quite easily.
Yeah.
Likewise.
So, and actually going back and being a newbie again is a really exciting thing. And if you can do that with other skills that you've collected along the way, that's even more exciting. So, in my case, it was a couple of different things. I mean, there was a big, personal reason why I moved into that particular career, and that's all to do around the death of my father and how that affected me and really changed my perspective and really brought home my own mortality. And again, me thinking, what would I really like to do right now?
Sure.
And thoughts become things. So be very careful for what you wish for, because good thoughts will take you to the right place. And that was
just on that. Do bad thoughts take you to the bad place?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thoughts become things, definitely. What you think about manifests, and without getting all woo-woo on this now, but I firmly and fully believe that we create our own realities, and our thoughts are massively powerful, way more powerful than we expect. We believe that our lives are formed by all these external influences, and they're not. They play part of that, but actually it's what we aspire to and our will.
It's always there. Your thoughts are always
there. The power
there.
of your will is an incrable thing, and again, we can go down the rabbit hole with these conversations. But yeah, for me, it was
next podcast.
Yeah, for me, it was about stepping out and doing something really different, and a really big change, and just kind of having time to stop and refresh and change the clothes and say, today I can do this, and also as well having that confidence that sometimes switching career is a positive thing. I mean, this is now my fourth main career that I've enjoyed. I'm planning that it'll be my last career, hopefully a lengthy one.
I was going to say, yeah, let's hope it's got a few more years, isn't it?
But yeah, I look at it now in terms of what I'm doing, and to be fair, I look at what I've achieved in a short space of time and the recognition I've gained, and then I think, wow, I've got 20, 30 years ahead of me if I live that long to continue to grow that, and that's eminently possible, and I love doing what I do and I enjoy it.
So for the listeners here today, where can they find your artwork? Is it Facebook? Is it the website?
Just Google Nial Adams. That's Nial Adams, Adams, nialadams.com, and I'm sure there'll be some links in here, and you can find me on Instagram and Facebook and all
Amazing.
sorts.
So the final thing is thank you. I hope the listeners and people watching got a lot out of it. And the last thing I'd like to leave you with is a thank you. A thank you to Nial. Without his guidance and mentorship, I'm living a life now that I never thought was possible, and it wouldn't have been possible without you, Nial. So it's an honor to have you on our first podcast. This hopefully will be the first of many, but just a really sincere thank you, and I hope you enjoyed listening. Thank you.